everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming at you today with some information about the birth bond and what we're going to do with it. I have before me certain documentation. Let's put that up there. And what we've got, let me take my background off. Get started here. And what we have here is birth certificates, 3 of them. And they are sequentially numbered on the bottom, consecutively ending in 37, 38, and 39. And you'll notice the very top says State of Iowa, Certification of Vital Record. And it says Certificate of Live Birth, State of Iowa. And then it's got the second name on there is Keith Orland Little. You'll notice it's in all caps. Now this document has 2 seals on the bottom and 2 signatures, along with its number, along with the number at the top, which is a Q-SIP number, an 8-digit Q-SIP number. Most people think that there's the Q-SIP number is only 9 digits. There's 3 sets of digits, 6, 8, and 9. The 8-digit number is for private issue. Okay. Along with that, we have a digital receipt. And we also have the actual paper receipt that they sent. Okay. We also have an important notice. This certificate of vital record is a valuable. You're able to put value to it. Legal document. It is an official document that has been issued as legal proof of the true and correct recorded facts of an Iowa vital record event. Registered with the state of Iowa.
Greetings.
In accordance with the law of Iowa requiring filing of records. This certificate is a reproduction of the original on file with the Bureau of Health Statistics, Iowa Department of Health and Human Services, which is the state program. Like I've said before, the federal government requires all states to have a state recovery program, and it is regulated through the Health and Human Services, which is where it's entered in through the enumeration at birth. It is issued on a special safety paper featuring a customized steel engraved border and certification seals. Such reproductions are accepted as the original record unless the certificate has been altered in any manner, such as by laminating or marking on the paper. If an error exists on the certificate of vital record, contact the Bureau of Health Statistics. Do not lose or destroy this certificate. Protect it by keeping it in a safe, secure location. This certificate of vital record is issued to the intended applicant who is entitled to receive the document. This certificate is received by, if this certificate is received by anyone other than a person entitled to receive the document, the recipient shall immediately surrender the certificate of vital record to the Bureau of Health Statistics. Bureau of Health Statistics strives daily to provide excellent customer service, not consumer. Please scan the code below and complete the Vital Records customer survey to share your experience and level of satisfaction. So, what we're first going to discuss is the fact that that is issued, and those seals on the bottom are by the governor and the state registrar. Now, if you understand the governor's capacity, they are the commander-in-chief at the state level. In other words, it's a military position, therefore it's a military document, and it's an issuance under treaties, international treaties. And as we go through this information, I know I told people that I'm going to do lives regularly 3, 6, and 9, and we probably won't get through this today through our 3, 6, and 9. So we'll do it in subparts. It'll be a short series. Because like I said, there is a lot of information. And so what I'm going to do here is go to Libre Code first, because that's the premise. Like I said, it's a military instrumentality. So let's look at the Libre Code. 3 specific articles in Libre Code. First, we're going to look at Article 15. And it says, make sure I got my, okay. It says, military necessity admits of all direct destruction of life or limb of armed enemies. Armed enemies. I've never carried a weapon on me, a gun of any sort, except when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old in Boy Scouts. And that was a little 22. And of other persons whose destruction is incidentally unavoidable in the armed contests of the war. It allows the capturing of every armed enemy and every enemy of importance to the hostile government or of peculiar danger to the captor. It allows of all destruction of property and obstruction of the ways and channels of traffic, travel, or communication, and of all withholding of sustenance or means of life from the enemy, of the appropriation of whatever an enemy's country affords necessary for the subsistence and safety of the army, and of such deception as does not involve the breaking of good faith, either positively pledged regarding agreements entered into during the war or supposed by the modern law of war to exist. Men who take up arms against one another in public war do not cease on this account to be moral beings. In other words, they have to hold the morals at utmost priority, responsible to one another and to God. Article 38, and this is under Section 2, Public and Private Property of the Enemy, Protection of Persons, and especially of women, of religion, the arts, and sciences. This goes to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the Constitution and the Treaty of Berne, protecting intellectual and artistic works. Punishment of crimes against the inhabitants of hostile countries. Article 38, private property, unless forfeited, not pledged, forfeited by crimes or by offense of the owner. In other words, like what you're talking about in the trust, the owner the beneficiary is deemed to be the true owner in equity. And when we speak about beneficiary, we're speaking about trust. So equity acts in trust law. That's what equity is. It's trust law. Common law is contract law. Can be seized only by way of military necessity, not by your volunteering. And that means if you pledge it, then it's not an acquisition by necessity. For the support or other benefit of the Army or of the United States. This is the important part. If the owner has not fled, the commanding officer, governor of the state, will cause receipts to be given, and I have receipts along with the original certificate of live birth in its form, saying it acts the same way as the original, which may serve the spoliated owner to obtain indemnity. Article 139. I want everybody to remember the first duty in law is legal notice. And Article 139, again going to the treaties, talks about an armistice, which is a treaty, is binding upon the belligerents from the day of the agreed commencement, but the officers, but the officers of the armies are responsible from the day only when they receive official information of its existence. So I have to inform them through a legal notice. So let's take a look. The next thing, if anybody's got anything, please say something. We've only got Russ up here, but I want to remind everybody the StreamYard link is down there for anybody that wants to join the panel. And the more we have, the better the discussion we have. So please feel free to join.
I was curious, Keith, have you ever heard of a Series 6 or Series 63 license? Seems that all financial advisors and people of that nature have to have those. I extended onto that with that whole estate manager. And as I'm reading, they have to have that to be able, the agents and the financial brokers.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
right. So wouldn't that mean that because it says here the Series 6 is a securities license entitling the holder to register as a company's representative and sell certain types of mutual funds. Obviously, that's blue, can be clicked on what a mutual funds is. Variable securities and insurance. Holders of the Series 6 license are not authorized to sell corporate or municipal securities, direct participation programs, and options. Now,
because they're only a representative. So they're a representative. They're the representative of the person that can do that issue. Goldsmith says, "I have a Series 6 license." Please come up, Goldsmith. I always appreciate your content.
It says with the Series 6, and financial professional can purchase and sell certain types of mutual funds, variable life insurance, municipal funds, variable annuities, and unit investment trust. That's what piqued my interest. Yep. What is a unit investment trust? A unit investment trust is an investment company that offers a fixed portfolio, generally of stocks and bonds, as redeemable units to investors for a specific period of time.
Yep.
It is designed to provide capital appreciation and or dividend income. Unit investment trust, along with mutual funds and closed-end funds, are defined as investment companies.
Yep, and that's what your licenses and IDs are for, is for investments. But it's a foreign investment. Otherwise, it's not a public investment. It's a private investment, and that's the conversion. It's commingling.
That's how they're trading. Swapping it.
They're commingling private investments or private interests with public interests. And Brian Parker, you're welcome to come up too. I would certainly appreciate your views on this, because I know you're on top of the ball. You've already done a lot of this stuff, and I'm just hoping that I can help fill in some gaps, and I'm hoping you can help fill in some other gaps the same as well. And we have Goldsmith up here. How you doing today, brother? How you doing, Goldsmith? Are you hearing me, brother?
Can't hear.
Can you hear us?
Well, I can't hear you.
Well, we can hear you. You'll have to
try to come out and come back in. I can't hear anything.
Yep. So in the meantime, let's take a look at this, what we've got on the screen, which is protection of American interests. American interests. And it's very short and succinct. It says, officers of the Foreign Service shall protect the rights and interests of the United States in its international agricultural, commercial, and financial relations. And remember, we determined that finance means to put an end to or to settle. It is actually synonymous with settlement. In pursuance of this duty, they shall guard against the infringement of rights of American citizens in matters relating to commerce and navigation, which are based on custom, international law, or treaty, and not your goddamn policies. Okay? That's why I talk about custom, international law, and treaties. Observe, report on, and whenever possible, endeavor to remove discriminations against American agricultural, commercial, and industrial interests in other countries. Protect the national commercial reputation of the United States. And as I said, the United States citizen is known as a United States business, and vice versa. United States business means a United States citizen, and you can find that in 15 U.S.C. 4724. The next one, 18 U.S. Code 1028. Fraud and related activity in connection with identification documents, authentication features, and information. Whoever, in a circumstance described in subsection C of this section, knowingly and without lawful authority produces an identification document, identification feature, or false identification document, knowingly transfers an identification document, authentication feature, or a false identification document, knowing that such document or feature was stolen or produced without lawful authority. Knowingly possesses with intent to use unlawfully or transfer unlawfully 5 or more identification documents, other than those issued lawfully for the use of the possessor. Let me see here. Where's the next one? There's certain, this is a longer one. I don't want to read the whole thing, but it's 18 U.S.C. 1028. So you can look it up anytime. Except as provided in paragraph 3 and 4, a fine under this title or imprisonment for not more than 15 years or both if the offense is the production or transfer of an identification document, authentication feature, or false identification document that is or appears to be an identification document or authentication feature issued by or under the authority of the United States, or a birth certificate or driver's license or personal identification card. This is where they take that personal identification card, that driver's license, and they convert the name on it to an investment firm or a consultant firm, whatever they're using it for. It's a firm name, and they convert the last name to a firm name. That's a falsification or an unknowing alteration of the data elements we gave them for their use without us knowing it. A fine under this title or imprisonment for not more than 20 years or both if the offense is committed to facilitate a drug trafficking crime in connection with a crime of violence or after a prior conviction under this section becomes final. A fine under this title or imprisonment for not more than 30 years or both if the offense is committed to facilitate an act of domestic terrorism. You cannot use that United States business pursuant to a resident determination that was never deemed necessary by the board, but was only volunteered. And this is what we're talking about. We got Ramon and Brian G. Parker. How you doing today, brothers?
Good. Am I coming through good?
You're coming through great.
Awesome.
How you doing today, brothers?
Oh, we got some feedback.
Got any other devices on, please turn them off.
It's good to see you again, man. It's been a while. I'm glad you're healthy.
Yeah. I've been putting on some weight the last 6 months. I was down there to 105 pounds, and I've put on 40 pounds in the last 6 months. So I'm doing good.
What have you been doing to put on weight?
Changed the diet. Change the diet.
Hell yeah, man. Good for you.
So, absolutely. And Brian, how you doing today, brother?
Good. How you doing?
I am great. I am great. And everybody, I want everybody to pay attention to Brian Parker. If you'll drop your link in the chat for me, Brian, I'll drop it down for everybody. Everybody get over to Brian Parker and check him out for sure. He's got just as great information as I do, if not better. He's actually incorporated this into his life and seems to have been able to bypass the interception for a number of years now. A number of years. He was one of the first guys I started following on Facebook, and he has his own site or his own group on Facebook as well as his own YouTube channel. So if you would drop that link in the back chat for me, Brian, I would appreciate it. We'll drop it down for everybody so they can go check you out.
All right, let's see if I can bounce and grab it.
All right. And Goldsmith, how you doing? You got volume today?
Hey, how you guys doing? I'm sorry, my gardeners just showed up, so it's
All right. Well, we'll hang on to that then, and when they're gone, or there's not any noise, unless you got real quick on that Series 6.
Yeah. This year I got my Series 6 license, and before that I had my SIE, and I just got into this information. Just got my license to learn more of the vocabulary. I never intended on being a stockbroker or anything. I just got into this information. I needed to learn as much as I can, and the people teaching this stuff don't even know what they're teaching, so.
Yeah, they're taking bits and parts, and that's why I hope my research and what I put forth, I hope nobody's taking it as if though I'm telling you to do anything. I'm just doing my research based on my firsthand experience and showing what I'm doing that is having effect. And it's like I said earlier, the first duty in law is legal notice. So all you really have to do is just give them a legal notice that, hey, there's something wrong. I'm not confronting your title or your office. I'm confronting the record. That's what's wrong. There's an error or omission, and we need to fill those gaps in or correct the errors. That's all we're doing.
Definitely.
So the next thing I want to pull up is a document called Statement of Separation that I presented a few years back in the public and sent it out to a certain few people. Let me make sure I got it here. Okay. Window. And everybody can see that good? Okay. At the top, you'll see a funky looking number. That's called an epoch number. Epoch relates to a major event in one's life, or a major journal, or major document, major recording, major incident, however you want to put it. But in this sense, it's a reference to when I wrote this document as a restatement of separation as amended. And again, like I said, the first duty of law is legal notice. And that notice is notice to agent, is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. Adjutant General of the state of Iowa, embassy, because we are talking about international affairs. United States Bureau of Consular Affairs is who deals with that, and that's under the Department of State. And there's and I've got this posted on Facebook. I'll go ahead and repost it on my YouTube page in comments or in the community, so everybody can have access to it in the community on YouTube. It says United States Department of State instruction for federal, state, and local law enforcement and other officials regarding foreign nationals in the United States and the rights of consular officials to assist them. Then we have consular notification of access, which is from Travel State Gov. Consular notification access reference card. So it's a card that you'll be able to have as a private credential to reference a private record. Steps to follow when a foreign national is arrested or detained in the United States. This is why we're correcting the record. They're considering us United States citizens and residents and not as foreign nationals. That's the main problem with the documentation. And anybody that has any issues with this, please feel free to speak up. And let me drop Brian's link down in the chat. Oops.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's mistaken that people will get a FOIA request done, to the immigration offices and try to use that to establish the record.
Yep, and that's what we're doing. If you saw my videos in the past on the state's vital statistics jurisdiction that is established through the enumeration of birth, and that's done through the Health and Human Services and then disseminated to the other agencies, and it's specifically for statistics. Statement of separation.
I think where a lot of people lose it, though, Keith. I mean, and I'm just thinking here because, obviously what we've seen over the years, people get intimidated with this paperwork.
Yeah.
And I'm just sharing, obviously, with what I've done. There was a time that I was intimidated with all this shit too. But I've always said from day number one, I really don't even believe in the paperwork. What ought to be done shall be done. There's nothing new under the sun. It has already been laid down, ordained, and established as those assets that we inherited. So whoever changed that, once they stop us and we say, hey, we're not who you think we are. Notice to agent is notice to principal. Notice to principal is notice to agent. Correct your record. I shouldn't have to write a goddamn thing down. In the beginning was Wyrd, and all I would have to do is tell you, as my brother and sister, hey, your record is false. The benefit seems to be going to you guys, and I seem to have to be working to put food on your goddamn table instead of my own goddamn family. Now, that's reason and logic that doesn't make any sense. And excuse the goddamn, but you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah. But the main problem again there is that we're all guilty in the fact that we went through a public education system that indoctrinated us, and there comes a time in a man's life where we have to stop and say, wait a minute, something's seriously wrong, and I need to do something about it. And in realizing the wrong is in part your own heirs, you have to work and assist them just like they are supposed to assist you. And it's all a matter, if you want equity, you must first bring equity. If you want peace, you must first come in peace.
And to add to that, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, to add to that, it's my belief that the system was intended and created for this sole purpose right here, to protect the usufruct. Now, the people, the men and women behind, the actors are obviously doing a malicious job at it, but the system was created beautifully, and people are trying to tear it down when, in fact, we should really be reading and trying to figure out how to work with it instead of against it. But yeah, it's just to protect the usufruct from the heathens.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with the English language. Once you comprehend it a little better, you find out how beautiful it really is and how you can use it artistically yourself. So as we continue on, it says, Statement of Separation. I, formerly known as Keith-Orland, stop, Minaj, semicolon, Conrady-Little, and this is because there is a event in my life that changed it from Conrady to Little. So there's a connection there, and that's the adoption. Remember, I speak highly about adoption. All of their codes, rules, and policies are merely adoptions of the international laws, customs, and treaties. Everything trickles down. Those international laws, customs, and treaties are merely adoptions from the scriptures around the world. And now known by L. Hotep II Peril, my own pen name. Do hereby make the following statement of separation from employment of trade or business, otherwise known as performing the functions of public office within or without the Department of State of the United States, information agencies, and instrumental constructs. It's all constructive. As used herein, the term employment includes all periods of assignment or detail. This is why I told you, Russia, we have to help fix the details. We put those details in there, as well as any periods temporary, part-time, or intermittent employment therein, and the term separation includes any suspension for any period in excess of 30 days. So when they suspended my license for an excess of 30 days, it includes that. That created a separation. retirement from commercial activities, entry into disability. It's a legal disability because I'm not legally qualified to hire an attorney to make a representation in those corporate Article 1 courts, where I am required, pursuant to Texas Rule of Civil Procedure 12, to have a board of directors in order to hire an attorney for those Article 1 courts. That's never happened. I've never organized and created instruments giving them notice that I am organized, giving them a list of the board of directors, who they are, how they can be contacted and all that, and be allowed to be permitted to do business. That's 12 U.S.C. 614. Or pension programs of which benefits are guaranteed for prior consideration, whether duly paid or as contributions. This relates to the Social Security and the FICA payments that you're not actually required to. It was a consensual thing with your employer that you did without knowing that you are exempt. First, I have in my possession only documents, instruments, which I am allowed through prior consideration for actual benefit by and through equal rights among the laws, and am not qualified to place liability in, on, or for the public record. I'm not a public official. 2, I shall not publish nor reveal to any person any classified or administratively controlled information of which I have knowledge, or any other information transmitted to myself in confidence in the course of any performance, contracts, leases, bids, awards, rewards, etc., except as may be authorized by the officials of the employing department or agency, empowered and conferred by federal executive order granting permission to disclose such information. I hereby advise all principals, agents, actors, participants, performers, interlopers, interviewers, officious, intermeddlers, etc., to heed the criminal penalties related to United States government records, information, and the use thereof as a matter of national importance. Violations are often committed, but not limited to, by officials, officers of the court, and participating agents not learned in law. This is reference to 5 U.S.C. 552A, records maintained on individuals, whereas 5 U.S. Code is employees. And that's what they're doing. They're keeping records on you because you submitted the data elements, and the presumption is you are an employee of the United States because you were conferred that nationality of a United States citizen, which is a United States business. Again, 15 U.S.C. 4724. Under 18 U.S.C. sections as follows: 641, public money, property, and records. Those are public records. 793, gathering, transmitting, and losing defense information.
Keith, can we go back to that previous section for just a second?
This one?
You were talking about that the businesses, the corporations are citizens.
Yes.
Right? And to add to that a little bit, if you look up what the real definitions of a person is, I know a lot of people years ago got upset when the Supreme Court made this ruling, but they ruled that all corporations are citizens, right? And so when you're seeing something, in code or whatever, and it's referring to person, a person can be a corporation, a trust, an LLC. There's multiple things other than just the individual with a belly button that can be the citizen or the person.
Right. It's basically what it is I believe they have approximately 26 different jurisdictions, and it encompasses all of those 26 jurisdictions in the civil forums. And that's what we're dealing with. So as we continue on, it says gathering or delivering information to aid foreign government, disclosure of classified information, diplomatic codes and correspondence, disclosure of confidential information generally, concealment, removal, or mutilation generally. Under 17 CFR 1606, which is your securities instruments, errors or omissions, and that's what we're talking about. Everything we've entered is an error or there was an omission of a qualified signature for that entrance, so it would be entered in as the beneficiary rather than a contract agent as a trustee. 18 U.S.C. 542, entry of goods by means of false statements. 1512, tampering with a witness, victim, or informant. 1028, fraud and related activity in connection with identification documents, authentication features, and information, which is what we just read. And then 1028, aggravated identity theft, because once you give them notice, now they can no longer change or use that data information the way they want to. And if they use it with any way they want to, that is identity theft. Under Criminal Resource Manual 1028 is the specifically mentioned identification documents, and those are in fact what they are known as. Let me see here. Birth certificate bond, individual surety bond, international bill of exchange, and international promissory note. That's what your birth certificate bond is. It covers individual surety bonds, international bills of exchange, and international promissory notes. 42 U.S. Code sections as follow. 1983, civil action for deprivation of rights. 2227, violation of specific sections. 2273, violations of sections generally. 2274, communication of restricted data. 2275, receipt of restricted data. 2276, tampering with restricted data. This is the unlawful conversions. They tampered with the restricted data because we ourselves are restricted in knowledge of giving a legal name with an address, and they convert it. That's tampering with the data that we're restricted to. Disclosure of restricted data. These violations lay wide the civil process for 42 U.S. Code 1983, civil action for deprivation of rights. 50 U.S. Code 783 under national defense, sections as follows. Receipt of or attempt to receive. I got to mute you, Brian. No, I got to mute you. Brian. There you go. Receipt of or attempt to receive by foreign agent or member of communist organization classified information, and limitation period. In regards to employees, principals, agents, actors, performers, participants, etc., these restrictions are consistent with and do not supersede, conflict with, or otherwise alter the obligation, rights, or liabilities of said persons created by Executive Order 12356, Section 7211 of Title V of the U.S. Code, governing disclosure to Congress, which is a communication with Congress. Section 1034 of Title 10 of the U.S. Code, as amended by the Military Whistleblower Act, governing disclosures of illegality, waste, fraud, abuse, or public health or safety threats. The Intelligence Identity Protection Act of 1982, 50 U.S. Code 421 as sequential, governing disclosures that could expose confidential agents, and the statutes that protect agents against disclosures that may compromise the national security, including but not limited to sections that I mentioned above. These. Title 18 of the U.S. Code and Sections 4B of the Subversive Activities Act of 1950, 50 U.S. Code 783 that I just mentioned above here. The definitions, requirements, obligations, rights, sanctions, and liabilities created by said executive order and listed statutes are incorporated into this agreement and are controlling. What that's referring to without saying it is 48 CFR 52.212-5, contract terms and conditions required to implement executive orders or statutes - commercial items, commercial products. I reaffirm that the provisions of the espionage laws have been made available to said principals, agents, actors, performers, participants, etc. I have returned all necessary classified information to proper authorities, that I will not transmit, communicate, or convey classified information to any unauthorized persons, organizations, that I will promptly report to the Federal Bureau of Investigations any attempt by an unauthorized person to solicit classified information with or without a security briefing. This means when an officer of the local police department comes by and wants to get my identification, and I give him a given name and a family name, and he converts it to a last name or first name and last name, he is just violated an international treaty. And that goes to the Federal Bureau of Investigations. I am aware that Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 1001, provides criminal penalties for knowingly and willingly falsifying or concealing material facts in a statement or document submitted to any agency of the United States government concerning a matter under its jurisdiction. It is hereby noticed as Articles 15, 38, and 139, not all inclusive, of the Libra Code, that there exists a natural amnesty between the United States, the states of the Union, and men naturally born under the land as true heirs of the very breath of the life that makes those living men's souls, or those men living souls. Genesis 2:7, this is the inheritance of the Lord, and the righteousness is theirs, is thereof of the Lord. And that's Genesis 2:7, as God formed man of the dust of the ground, wherein he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, and man became a living soul. I am not a man. A man is the description of the living soul. Isaiah 54:117 is that righteousness of the Lord, where we're supposed to speak up against any false judgments, and there shall be no prospering against us. Leviticus 25, verses 23 through 25, the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine, and ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all the lands of your possession ye shall grant a redemption. And that's what the indemnification is. It's a redemption. It's a release of all liabilities. This will is accomplished by earning one's daily bread. Read Matthew 6:9 through 13. This daily bread, that's the Lord's Prayer. This daily bread is earned in voice and is a tribute with others in the name of Jesus for one's faith in our Father's will. It is not my will. He gave me a free will, but I accept his will above anything. Titus 3:8, this is a faithful saying, that I will, that thou constantly affirm, that he who hath believed in God be careful to maintain good works, as it relates to the good faith. And these things are good and profitable unto men. This natural amnesty is to be passed unto the nations, which was known before such nations were formed. That's King James Version, Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou wast cast from the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. And Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. If you're not a priest unto me, I must deny you. And since you denied me and didn't teach your children about me, I must deny your children. Because we did not know such things, or know many such things in the past, we have come to know the error of our ways and repent for our partaking in the indulgences of convenience. Jeremiah 9:19. Therefore we recover from our misdeeds and now walk with him in peace throughout all of his lands. Ephesians 6:11 through 18. In ministering his words, of which we now use as our holy writs. And in Jesus' name we direct thee to King James Version, John 1:1. In beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, wherein it was subscribed as follows. And King James Version, Psalms 33:9, wherein it is subscribed as follows, for he spake and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast. That is my standing, his word, that he commanded. And King James Version, John 3:33, wherein it is subscribed as follows, he that hath received his testimony hath set to his seal that God is true. That's what those seals say in those birth certificates. And King James Version, Proverbs 3:5-6, where it is subscribed as follows: every word of God is pure. He is a shield unto them that put their trust in him. That is the express trust. It's already done. He spake, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast. And though not unto his word, add thou not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. In King James Version, Revelation 21:5, where it is subscribed as follows: unto me, and he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. In King James Version, Ecclesiastes 1:9, wherein is subscribed as follows: the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. There is no new thing under the sun. Intent of amnesty is established and recognized at the original posting of Statement of Separation on Facebook on the 12th day of the 6th month of the year of our Lord 2020. So this is almost 4 years old, and this is a restatement of that original post. It has already been posted in the public forum. They have already been given public notice. The intent of amnesty is restated in the public domain as a second witness from our private point of origin at the following public World Wide Web internet site, a publishing platform for the world, with supportive abstract content of a consortium of sources from the same public domain. And then it's got my website. I urge everybody to go check it out. Let me drop it. Go to the notices page and you'll find all kinds of notices. On that notices page, you will find my statement of separation. 9, whereas the minimum standards for birth certificates are applicable to Department of Defense under 5 U.S.C. 301 departmental regulations, and that's applicable to Department of Defense under plain writing. 10, whereas the purpose of that authority is stated at 32 CFR Part 156, Department of Defense Personnel Security Program, and states the following, and it's got all these nice little codes, executive orders and codes, particularly this one, Homeland Security Presidential Directive 12. That's the new ID program, and it specifically says it's for federal government employees and contractors. I am not an employee and am not contracting with the federal government. It was a conference, not a contract. It was a gift, not a contract. Whereas the substance of the purported or purpose stated in point 10 is at variance for matters of pre-classification standards by enumeration at birth for fundamental differences in nature. Whereas the cause of mistakes within the public record system relative to Keith Orland Little, notice it's the all caps, and other derivatives such as lit as a firm name and presumed to be an obligor by enumeration. See 20 CFR 422.402, U means an individual who owes a debt to the United States within the scope of this subpart, and 20 CFR is employee benefits. Would be my own accident, as noted in 49 CFR 387.5, which says that an accident means repeated and continuous exposure to the same conditions that place a liability on the public where the insured never expected nor intended. Had I known that, I would never have done it. 13, whereas the variances in the record reflect many inaccuracies, I forgive all mistakes and now require the record to be amended to its true correctness, and which may require automatic and mandatory declassification in accordance with 22 CFR 9.9, declassification and downgrading, and 22 CFR is foreign nationals, international relations. Whereas the record will reflect that there has been a misdescription of a foreign national from the aired entry of minimum standards for birth certificates, which is in itself in discord of 5 U.S.C. 301, and 32 CFR Part 156. Where supportive information can be found, and which is not all inclusive at the following, is all relative, relating to relator, to declassification, and should be no issue with Homeland Security redress if one is competent to comprehend the order of things. This is where we redress our grievances under Article 1. The right to petition the government for redress. This is where it is. It's a Homeland Security redress. It tells you right there. Also see 40 CFR 403.13, environmental protection. Now, why are we talking about environmental protection? Because under 7 U.S.C. 136, animal includes but is not limited to man. Again, that's agricultural, and I am not a man. I am the living soul that is described in a manual form by person. 42 U.S. Code Chapter 55, National Environmental Policy. And again, notice that's a national environmental policy under 42 U.S. Code, Health and Welfare, or excuse me, Social Security. 18 U.S. Code 2265, full faith and credit is given to protection orders. Under the environmental protection orders, I am classified as a man, and therefore I am protected as that animal. Wildlife and fisheries. 42 U.S. Code Chapter 129, National Community Service Corporation. Corporation means the Corporation for National Community Service. Source 45, public welfare. So your public welfare is a national community service where you're voluntarily giving data elements. 36 CFR, which is National Forestry. It says National Forest System Land Management Planning, Forest Service Department, and Agriculture. Public property or public lands. 36 CFR, public lands. You have been given notice, or you have been given knowledge. Please act accordingly. Done in good faith, with knowledge, and of patent right to express. May the Lord bless us all. Reverently, Chaplain Keith. Now, I know this is extensive information, but I urge everybody to do your simple research. Because like I said, we're talking about a matter of international affairs and not domestic. That corporation is a foreign corporation. We are the domestic people of the land. And they have displaced us, or the presumption is that we are not of the land, but we are in that personal capacity, when we have a greater capacity of being the living soul. And when we give up that capacity, we subject ourselves to the nation rather than being a prophet unto the nations, bringing the rightly divided word of truth. The next thing I want to look at gotta shut this down. And please feel free, anybody wants to say anything. Greetings, Iman. How you doing today, sister?
All is well, brother. I'm just here to witness your testimony. All is love.
Absolutely appreciate it. So now what we've got is complimentary information that I'll be giving to them with this birth certificate. And what I'm going to do, again, it's a matter of indemnification. So it's a collateralization of their surety bond so that we can assist each other in making sure from this point forward that the data elements being entered are true and correct right from the start. And this is called slugs. It's state and local government securities. That's where we went over those definitions from NASDAQ, talking about how an investment, the definition of investment is a creation of money. So what do you think? Are you, Brian, I want to ask you specifically, are you familiar with the court registry investment system?
Yeah, the CRIS system. Yep.
Absolutely. So all the data elements that go into the court registry investment system is an investment, and that is, by the definition of NASDAQ, the creation of money. It's not the federal government that's creating the money. It's the people that they're using as of a United States business, as if though they are a consultant firm or an investment firm or a brokerage firm, whatever kind of firm they're implying in that, they're using the firm name instead of the last name. That's an unknown conversion that I didn't know of until I got that financial index from the local court clerk. And again, I want to remind everybody, when it comes to these principles, at all levels of government, you have an executive and then the attorney and then the clerk. The executive is the one that directs everything. The attorney is the one that authorizes it, and then the clerk is the one that finally issues it. Federal Registered Government Documents, U.S. Treasury securities, and state local government securities. Let's click on that one and show you that one.
Brother, one quick question. So in the authorization you're talking about of attorneys, that will be like the attorney general and the district attorneys?
Say that again.
As far as the authorization, you went down with the three parties that do something in order. You mentioned about the attorneys. Will that be the attorney general and the district attorney?
No, your district attorney is the court, is the county level.
So the AG would be the that would be like the administrative level for like the county and the state.
No, okay. The city attorney. You, I mean, you have the executive office of the mayor. Under that executive office, you have the attorney and then the clerk. Under the county, you have the executive office of the commissioner, which has a board of directors that can hire the attorney, which is the district attorney. And then you have the district clerk. At the state level, you have the governor, the attorney general, and the secretary of state as the clerk of the state. Federal government would be the president, the U.S. Attorney General, and the Secretary of Treasury, or Secretary of Commerce, actually.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity, brother.
This one here, we're looking at U.S. Treasury securities, state and local government securities, the slugs, and it says background. Securities are a type of non-marketable treasury security that is available for purchase by state and local governments. And this, what's happening is you have a federal security at the Treasury through the TDA account and other issuers. And what's happening is when you give them that identification information, specifically the Social Security number for anything, they get to purchase by state and local governments. That's your county, your municipality, and the state. They get to purchase those. That's why I got 3 birth certificates with the serial numbers correlating one after the other. Now later on, here in about 6 months, I'm going to purchase another one. And I'm going to find out if they have any other securities that people have been buying, because that's what that is. That's the security, the certificate of birth. And it says, and issue other issuers as defined in 31 CFR 344.1 of tax-advantaged bonds. Securities have been issued by Treasury since 1972. See, the states don't issue securities. They issue commercial paper that they can then securitize under the state's blue sky securities laws. and they do that through the conversions that are unknown. The purpose of the SLGS program is to assist state and local government issuers in complying with yield restriction and rebate requirements applicable to tax-advantaged bonds under the Internal Revenue Code. Generally, the arbitrage agreement under the Internal Revenue Code provide that with certain exceptions, the proceeds of a tax-advantaged bond may not be invested in a yield that is materially higher than the yield of the bond. In the limited circumstances in which bonds proceed to be invested above the bond yield, the bond issuer generally is required to rebate the federal government any earnings in excess of the yield bond. And real quick before we leave the screen, we're going to switch over. This is 15 U.S. Code 4724, trade shows. And it says, the term United States business means a United States citizen. And like Brian said, it says a corporation, partnership, or other association created under the laws of the United States or of any state, or of a foreign corporation, partnership, or other association, more than 95% of which is owned by persons described in subparagraph A and B.
Well, you were saying those investments in those bonds and things. What I saw within that Series 6 and 63 license comes from the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, responsible for maintaining and administering all the license associated with the securities industry. And the 6 and the 63 license are often mentioned together because they are two necessary licenses required to sell insurance policies tied to investments.
Yep. Insurance policies rather than sureties, fidelities, or indemnifications. That's a conversion of a fidelity bond, surety bond, and indemnification bond all in one. Insurance is supposed to cover all three of those, but what they do is they're using it for their benefit and they're holding it against you, which is the primary grantor.
Well, it says the Series 6 is basically as the limited investment securities license, and the Series 63 is an administrative license that deals primarily in the securities laws that affect security sales in each state.
Yep.
So something's good. Go ahead.
So when we talk about arbitrage, like I said before, when you go to a dealership, a car, they're making you a offer to buy something from you. That's literally what a
Purchase order.
Purchase order. That's specifically what a purchase order is. It's an offer to buy something from you. In that buying something from you, they are also selling you something. On the other side of the counter, when it references you, you are selling something and buying something simultaneously. So watch. Get my screen share over here. Again, as we saw on the NASDAQ list for definitions, arbitrage is the simultaneous buying and selling of a security in two different markets, resulting in profits without risk. Perfectly efficient markets present no arbitrage opportunities. Perfectly efficient markets seldom exist, but arbitrage opportunities often are often precluded because of transaction costs. In other words, this is dealing with trust issues. The fact that the trustee has to get paid for his paperwork in doing those brokering.
Yeah. You get your 26% and give me the fucking rest. Where's the truth in lending on that?
Yep. And I wouldn't even I think actually it's 5 to 15%.
Is that right? Oh.
And then you give them the rest, because that 5 to 15% is basically, it's an unlimited thing. And if you offer them a lion's share, they're going to be more than willing to do everything you need. So if you make a bond out for $250,000 and you only take 15% and provide for like something I'm doing, getting ready and prepared to do for the local community, is I'd like to institute a program of education down here at the Grout Museum as it relates to this community being a national heritage community, reference to the 5 Sullivan brothers in World War II, and the fact that American in modern times, well, not just America, but most people around the world in modern times are becoming Hitler's willing executioners. And I'm providing an outline of that program that I want to establish as a local education program, and I will finance it by funding it with that bond. And they should be in agreement with it, because I'm going to give them the lion's share of it so that they can keep the program going in their community.
Well, that's going to take a lot of education on their part. Well, on your part to share with them, because how are you going to tell people, like, hey, by the way, your entire life you've been skimming off the Don. You're, you know.
Well, and that's what it comes down to, is showing them that they're taking from the beneficiary, and that's the very person they're supposed to be protecting as a trustee. And so I've got this whole outline set up for Hitler's willing executioners to go through and set up a educational program so that it can be followed and mastered, not just by me, but other people that I'm going to try to educate as leaders in the community.
For sure. Again, power in numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all it is. I'm not coming forth with anything but peace and education. And that's the ultimate thing that we're supposed to be dealing with pursuant to the Treaty of Berne. So let's look at the next one. And I do have my certificate of trust to present to them. And that's all I present, is a certificate of trust, in which lets them know I have a living will. That's all it is. The living will is an express trust, known as a revocable trust, that you can amend anytime during your life. But once you pass on as a testator and you become deceased, that living will as an express revocable trust now becomes an irrevocable trust, and it goes to the state to administrate in probate the execution of the will, to make sure that the execution of the will is going to distribute the beneficiary's property, or distribute the estate property to the beneficiaries. That's all it is. It's actually a pretty simple process, again, and a beautiful process once you comprehend it. So, let's see here.
So how many in your community, sorry for interrupting you, Keith. So we're going to have to begin with foundation. The foundation of it all, the foundation of a trust, the agreement, literally the foundation. You're going to have to catch people up to speed rather quickly.
Well, a lot of these community leaders are already quite adept at it, like the mayor, the attorney general, or the city attorney should be adept at it. And if not, then we go to 5 CFR 575.102 competencies. If
this is what had me concerned. This is what had me concerned, is because you bring up, the federal rules of civil procedure to who was it, the attorney who was it in your community, and he says, yeah, we don't follow the federal rules of civil procedure.
Yeah, that was the assistant district attorney.
There we go. And yeah, that's what had me concerned. It's like, wow, you're really going to have to catch these people up to speed, those that are really incompetent.
Yeah, well, I did that this last Monday at the city council meeting. I let them know about my interaction with the assistant DA and that little conversation that he doesn't follow federal rule. So I explained them very concisely that they took an oath to the United States Constitution, and under that Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 clearly says that Congress makes rules for the government, and that trickles all the way down. They don't make rules. They follow the policies that are delegated down to them from the Congress, which is communication of Congress.
Now, does Howlett v. Rose also apply to things outside of court when it comes to government?
What roles?
How was it Howlett v. Rose, a Supreme Court opinion, basically letting the courts know, hey, just because you don't like the federal rules of civil procedure or federal law doesn't mean that you can't just sidestep it in your court in these lower courts. Like you still
Yeah,
have to apply it.
right, and that's what Nevada troopers are trying to do right now. Is the federal government came in and quashed their thing about these traffic stops, and the Nebraska troopers are trying to fight the federal government, say they're going to continue conducting those traffic stops. And again, I remind you people, the Department of Justice says traffic violations are non-arrestable offenses. And yet here we are. Police are consistently across the nation. It's endemic. They are arresting people for non-arrestable offenses, period.
Yes, sir. Nebraska State Patrol at its finest. I'm here in Nebraska.
Yep. So the next one we have Regulation S. Regulation S is just as important as Regulation Z, and it says determining whether a potential investor is a resident or non-resident for securities laws purposes. A fundamental tenet of the federal securities law is that all purchases or sales of securities must either be registered under the Securities Act of 1933 or qualify for an exemption of registration. This goes to the qualified signature. You have to be able to qualify it as a exempt security in that it's only for indemnification purposes. The primary exemption relied upon by issuers seeking investors pursuing a visa under the EB-5 program is provided by Regulation S under the Securities Act. Regulation S generally provides that the registration requirements of the Securities Act do not apply to offers and sales of securities if both the offer and sale occur outside the United States. Now, remembering that the United States as a debtor is located in Washington, D.C., this is a piercing of the corporate veil. The state itself, the state of Iowa, is not outside of the United States. The county is not outside of the United States. The municipality is not outside of the United States. However, I, as a man, am, and I, as a holder in due course, have right to enforce the instrument outside of the United States as the beneficiary, deemed to be the true owner. Additionally, Regulation S requires that the issuer not offer or sell securities to U.S. citizens or residents, even if those persons purchase the securities abroad. So it's not an offer. It's not an offer to sell. They can't offer or sell the security. It's for a private placement as a private issue for indemnification purposes only. It's very simple. Determining whether an offer or sale occurs outside the United States is a rather simple test. Namely, whether the investor is physically located outside of the United States, both at the time he or she is first solicited to purchase the security and at the time he or she executes the subscription agreement or other contract to purchase those securities. Now, this goes to that Article 38 of the Libra Code. The commanding officer shall issue receipts, shall cause issue of receipt so that the spoliated owner may obtain indemnity. That's all I'm doing. I'm obtaining indemnity. Once I obtain it, it is now to be maintained. That's the champerty and maintenance we discussed the other day. For example, if the investor is a student attending school in the U.S. on an F-1 visa, the student may not be approached to make an investment while he or she is within the United States. To do so would fail the above described prohibition on offers within the U.S. Further, soliciting a student's parents offshore, who then in turn send the subscription material to their child for signature while he or she is in the U.S. also will not qualify, because the offer to the actual investing person occurs when the student is physically located in the United States. So it has to be a foreign sale. So when I go and I put it in there, I make a private placement in their holding. It's not an offer or sale. It's a private placement for indemnification purposes only. In contravention of Regulation S, it would be noted if a parent signs the investment documents on behalf of his or her child while that child is physically located in the United States, the parent would be doing so as the child's agent, attorney in fact. Again, goes to the qualifying signature without recourse, paid to the order of Keith Orland Little, all uppercase, by grantor / benefactor, Keith Little. And the offer should be considered made to the student while in the U.S. In other words, the long-standing securities law tenet that you can't do indirectly what you can't do directly comes into play. In other words, as the true owner, I am the one that has the choice to buy, sell, or otherwise, not them. They can't just take an assumption, presumption, implication, or otherwise and do it for their purposes. There are securities laws that say they're not supposed to translate or convert the last name to a firm name within their United States record-keeping system. It's unlawful. They're violating securities laws, period. See the next one here. This is Harvard Law Review. Again, as it relates to trust property and the right to follow trust property when confused with other property. And again, this is a 12-page review from Harvard Law Review, and it simply states, I'm going to start out just at the top, and I'm not going to read the whole thing because it says pretty well. It is a commonplace of textbooks and cases on trust that if the trustee converts money or property belonging to the trust and mingles it with other property, the trust is gone. Their violation nullifies the trust. The general theory on this point is well expressed by Lewis J. in Thompson's appeal. Whenever a trust fund has been converted into another species of property, if its identity can be traced, it would be held in its new form liable to the right of the Sedicate trust. So long as it can, and the Sedicate trust is you. You yourself, the living being, is the Sedicate trust. You yourself are the estate trust. So long as it can be identified either as the original property of the Sedicate trust or as a product of it, equity will follow it. It cannot be anything but a product of me, because I was born first, and then they created the legal establishment with the name. In the prenatal record, there was no name. It wasn't until the birth clerk went to your mom and had her fill out that document as informant. And the right of reclamation. This is the same thing as right of salvation. This is your salvation and resurrection in a new name, by merging the old stuff that is now condemned for its violations and now merged in a good name. Attaches to it until detached by superior equity of a bona fide purchaser for valuable consideration without notice. Remember, it's a valuable document, and now I put the consideration on there with notice. Now they have to take note. Am I off anywhere on that, Brian? Can I ask you, do you think I'm off on that?
Well, the way I look at it, and from what they've said, like the revisers of Article 9, revised Article 9, a lot of times it seems that we want to go and personalize everything and associate everything with ourselves. Whereas what I see that happened after we're born, after our nativity, is to talk about the organization they create. They go and they create this organization by a exact same name. You know what I mean? However, a lot of people don't recognize really that it really isn't by an exact same name, because your mom and dad, when you're born, didn't name you, say, for instance, Keith Orland Little. They named you Keith Orland. They never attached a surname. So what they're doing is they're going and taking the father's surname and attaching it to the name that was given to you by mom and dad, which was Keith Orland, or in my case, Brian Glenn. They go and attach the father's name to that, which is Parker. All right. And something that I've looked at doing, like, for instance, genealogies. I've taken, for instance, Queen of England's genealogy, and I can trace it back to the House of Saban back in 780 AD. All right. And I was able to do that by following the maternal bloodline, the female bloodline. And I picked up on that. I was listening to a priest being interviewed, and he was being asked, what makes you Jewish? And he said, well, it used to be if your mama was Jewish, then you were Jewish. He says, and then it kind of changed to if either of your parents are Jewish, you're Jewish. He says, nowadays, he said, if you just practice Judaism, you're a Jew. And I kind of laughed. I thought, you know what? I guarantee you go and talk to any Orthodox Jew, and they're still going to tell you you are Jewish if your mother is Jewish. And there's a reason for that. I call it the Povich problem. You guys remember Maury Povich?
Yep.
You are not the baby daddy.
You are
know what I
not
mean?
the baby's daddy. Yep.
Now, if you're checking genealogy, how can you do that if you're following the paternal bloodline? How do you
Exactly.
know that somebody really was the father of someone? You know what I mean? So I call
And
it
if
the
I can,
Povich problem.
and if I can say
Whereas
real
if you
quick,
follow the maternal bloodline, there's no question who the mommy is, right?
exactly, and that's why I want to interject here real quick. Is man was discharged of his mother's waters, and as soon as that man was discharged, the patronymical father charged him as a man again. So there was no recordation that the man was discharged and a memorial that a legacy heir has arrived. And this goes to the zygote of the fertilizer of the woman's egg. Your mom is your next of kin, not your dad.
Well, incidentally, I think it's kind of funny since we're bringing up this topic. If you look right up here on the wall behind me, that is the bloodline from Queen Elizabeth being tracked all the way up to the House of Saban, 780 AD.
Right, and
But
yeah, and
anyway,
it's got the coat of arms with the family crest, and that's what I
right.
talk about when Harold.
So kind of the issue there is then when they've created this organization, they've just created an artificial entity. All right, just like Jiffy Lube is an artificial entity. You know what I mean? They've created an artificial entity, and you look at the birth certificate, and I've always contested it has nothing to do with the child or with the baby, because if you look at it, it looks identical to that certificate of title you have in the glove box of your car. But here's the issue with that. If I look at the title on the glove box of my car, it'll say it is a Ford police interceptor or whatever make of vehicle I'm looking at. Okay. Now, nowhere on that birth certificate does it say what the certificate is for. That it's for a Homo sapiens sapien. You know what I mean? Horses have birth certificates, but even in the horse's birth certificate, it's going to tell you what breed it came from. You know what I mean? Along with who
Well, and that's
started it. But
and
there
that's
is
what
nothing
birth
like that
certificates.
on the birth certificate.
Yeah, see, that's what birth certificates are actually for. Is for agricultural animals. It's called. They live in stables that are called livery stables, and you have been delivered.
The only thing on the birth certificate that might make you feel like it could have something to do with you is that it'll say male or female on it, which those are scientific terms. Go back 50
Yep.
years ago, it used to say boy or girl. Now it says male or female, which is a scientific term. An extension cord has a male and a female end on it, right? You know, so a male or female what? You know, extension cord, a duck, a horse, what? You know,
Well, it's like somebody mentioned in the chat earlier. Are we man or mankind? See, that's like an
right?
image and likeness thing. It's not the same thing, but it's kind of, mankind, not man. Again, that's that agricultural term. Animal includes, but is not limited to man. But being of mankind, I am not said such animal. I have a competency that says I have the word of God within me, and that separates us from animals. We have a consciousness that is totally different.
Well, that this is what laid at the heart of a court case in Texas that it took a few months and was finally resolved in the judge's chambers, and it was pertaining to man or other animal, and it was being fought from a religious standpoint because he was saying I am not an animal, and
Yeah,
all of the laws and the codes and the regulations that you're using define me as man or other animal.
yeah, and that's what I was talking about. Genesis 2:7, wherein God forms man of the dust of ground. It didn't have anything to do with informant of mom. It had to do with the original form that God created man of the dust of the ground. And when he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils after mom discharged him from his mother from her waters, he became a living soul. Man became a living soul. We are not man. We are living souls, and we use a language that describes us by using the term man.
Yep.
So, anyway, that brings us to the end of today's stream for now. I'll be back at 6 p.m. to finish up with the rest of it. I think we should be able to finish up the rest of it at 6 p.m., about another hour, hour and a half there. So, everybody's welcome to join me again then. I appreciate you coming up, Brian, Goldsmith, Rahman, Russ, Iman. Anything on the way out? Say
Well,
what's on your mind and in your heart.
one more thing, if I could, back at that Series 63, it seems that the Series 63 security exam and license entitling the holder to solicit orders. Now, is that what we look back at that SS16 that creates the circuit? Now, here, the Series 63 is an exam that gives entitling the holder to solicit orders for any type of security in a particular state.
Right.
And
That's
then
what we're talking about. That's what we're
right here,
talking about. I'm not
yep,
issuing a security. I'm issuing a private placement for an indemnification, which is a type of security, which is relative to pay to the order of the Treasury Department for reissue of new security or redemption.
Asset.
right.
What's
So,
the
but
difference between the asset and the security? The
Yep.
it
asset
goes
is
on.
private replacement.
It goes
Yep.
on to say here that exam was developed to qualify candidates who want to work in the securities industry within a state and to sell investment products such as mutual funds, variable annuities, unit investment trust. Each state has its own securities and regulations called blue sky laws. So they have to have that Series 63 license, it would appear, to even hold that SS16 for that circuit, giving them the license to solicit these orders.
Yep. And
creating
real,
this conversion through this paperwork.
yep. And real quick here, I forgot to pull up. We were on 22 CFR 101.1, and I forgot to go to the next one, which is 101.2, of course, promotion of American interest. So let's look at this. This is pro. That means forward, in the future. Pre means in the past. Pro means in the future. Future motion. Relative to your right to travel, which is the inherent premise of your basic right under the First Amendment, freedom of expression, is your freedom to emote yourself or put yourself in motion. This is your intellectual thoughts that you can express to cause movement, to cause motion, to manifest things. That's your inherent freedom of expression.
I wanted to add something too, regarding your birth certificates and the consecutive numbers you have on the three that you had issued, because I did the same thing. I had ordered some, and 6 months later went and ordered some other ones, and sure enough, there's a gap of 141,000 numbers between that 6 month period.
So who all is buying into it? You can track those. You can track each one of those down because it's a copyright trademark thing according to the U.S. patent laws. They're using patented information known as a United States citizen.
Exactly.
So anyway, anybody else got anything to say?
Hey, Keith, I just want to add something to that since you're bringing up like trademark, for instance. I was listening to several attorneys on a Zoom here about 6 months ago talking, and they were looking at the situations that everybody's aware of, like with facial recognition in China and the credit score and things like that. And what these attorneys were saying is that there really doesn't seem to be any reason why we couldn't trademark our image to where, guess what? It becomes off limits.
Yeah.
And it might be something that people want to think about in the future.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating that you say that, because with the technology, the way it's rolling out right now, well, we need someone to enforce anything that has to do, that has to be digital. And well, I believe that's the reason that we have Space Force. But yeah, it's fascinating that you say that. So
Well,
how
and
would
that's
one go ahead?
well, that's how it's related, is because our information network today is in digital form and can capture any image and does capture all images that come onto this metaverse instantly. It's not that they're listening in on you or watching you. They don't have enough people to do that. But the AI is keeping track of it. And if there's a flag somewhere that says, "Oh, pay attention to this," they're going to check it out then. That's when they're going to start tracking you and listening to you.
Yeah, and this last bout that I had, when I got picked up over a traffic situation, I didn't give him shit. I didn't say shit. I didn't give him shit. They tried to book me. They had me in the holding cell. Then they finally came back around and they're like, "Hey, we got his facial recognition. We know who this guy is." I'm like, "You motherfuckers! If I would have had that trademark, I'd have been like, whoop."
Yeah. Well, and see, that's basically what they're doing when they're taking your fingerprints too. They're taking physical image processes to correlate to you, and that's unlawful. That's a property right. And you cannot convert property rights to commercial use in the usufruct system that is going to go against your property rights. Period.
Well, I would say the question though is whose property is it and who can prove it? You know what I mean? Where has your claim been made that you're actually claiming that property? So far, the state may have already been doing that. Say, for instance, with the Nubanit or birth certificate, things like that. But it's like people say what their name is. Say, okay, how do you know that's your name? Prove to me that's your name. Where have you ever claimed that name at? They
Right.
might show you like the driver's license. It's like, okay, well, the state's claimed it. Where have you claimed it? You know what I mean? And so you can't deny any attachments to that name if you have not officially made a claim to that. If that's not, say, for instance, DBA is the simplest way to do it.
Yep. And it says here, let me pull it up. The word, this is from Black's Law 4th. The words real and personal effects will embrace the whole estate. This is Hogan versus Jackson, Foxall versus McKinney. So there's actually two case laws on it. And it says the words real and personal effects will embrace the whole estate. So if I'm going to make a claim, I'm going to make it real simple. I make a claim to all real and personal effects, which encompass my whole estate. Nothing belongs to you that belongs to me first. That includes my fingerprint and any images you took from me unlawfully.
Let me drop a little hint in here as well. And I was thinking about that earlier because I saw your fair use scrolling across the bottom here. I don't advise anybody to use court cases. Okay.
No, it's just a
And
reference.
yeah, I know. But even like in Black's Law there, that they'll use like court references, court case references. And I don't recommend them. And the reason why is because those only really hold weight in their district.
Right,
Or
in
maybe a
commerce.
district next door or something. And then it also depends on how old they are. You know what I mean? They may look at something from 40 years ago and say, yeah, that's too old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why, like, a paralegal's doing research for a case, what they want to find is cases within their district that is closely identified to their case that they have that are as recent as possible as well. And now those cases, though, they may have come to those decisions, but you can also look deeper because that they've actually found that they've determined that by things that are written, for instance, in like United States Code. You know.
Yeah, and that's a great point too, because like I've been trying to tell people, I'm not going to use anything in theirs except as a reference, so so as to inform them and give them knowledge of things that they might be missing out on. That's it. You know, they're supposed to know the law, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. So to be fair, I have to give them notice of everything I know of by reference. That's
Hey,
it.
Keith, you had General Orders 100 earlier
Yep.
today.
Yep.
Hey, can you pop that back up? Is that
Will do.
possible? Because this is something that I looked at as well that I recommend to people. Because if you go back all through history, and I guarantee it even transfers to modern times. I mean, I was looking at the police officer that was showing somebody around, the halls of Congress, and he was telling them, "Oh, these are the holy of the most holies," and I'm thinking, they reference everything religiously, and just like the Caesars were literally considered gods, that these people are the gods today. The United States is kind of done a one-off. If you go to England in the Parliament, you've got the House of Lords. Go to article, I think it's 53.
Oh yeah. Prisoners.
Because I found this when I was looking up, for instance, like, protected persons. So my girlfriend was always watching. Yeah, it's a little small for me to read there. Yeah, I think that's correct. Because my girlfriend was always watching, these court TV stuff and everything. And you see all different people getting hauled in for, different trials and stuff. But you never saw like a pastor or a clergy member get hauled into court unless it was like a murder case or he was stealing from the church. Other things, smaller stuff, they never touch them over.
Yep.
Those little statutory crimes, they don't mess with them on that. But when you're freaking committing a crime against natural law, then they do nail people for it. So I recommend to people here, like Article 53, that because if you don't declare who it is you serve, they're going to serve that. They're going to assume that Donald Trump or Joe Biden is your God. That you serve the state is what they're going to assume.
Yep.
So I recommend that people get ordained, get something on the record And
Well,
do it through a non-501c3 organization too. Don't do it through
well,
one of
that
those.
well, that's why I mentioned Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. So this
Absolutely,
here,
you nailed it right there.
so this is Article 53. The enemy's chaplains, officers of the medical staff, apothecaries, hospital nurses, and servants, if they fall into the hands of the American army, are not prisoners of war, unless the commander has reasons to retain them. In this latter case, or if, at their own desire, they are allowed to remain with their captured companions, they are treated as prisoners of war and may be exchanged if the commander sees fit. See, I'm not up for exchange.
Yep.
And that
No
and,
more.
and that and that's relative. Real quick, let me remind you of Article 15, where it says responsible to one another and to God. Go ahead.
So no more going to recruitment centers.
Nope. You're not required to. That's a voluntary thing. That's
No
a
doubt.
voluntary thing that says that a 14-year-old boy that can quit school, but instead mom and dad make him, it's presumed that he's volunteering to take on higher education, which is why it's called high school, and medical benefits, which he's getting from mom and dad as a child under their household. It's a misconstruction of the language that we are required to sign up for selective service. We are not.
You know
So
what?
this
One of
is
the
what
things
I.
I've had
So go ahead.
people argue with me on, but I think there's a very good backing for it, is that these police officers that you're seeing on the street, and maybe even at the municipal level, this is the standing army that the labor code talks about.
Mm-hmm.
And if you
Oh
have
yeah.
any doubt about it, you go into the Army Field Manual, and the Army Manual simply states in there, when you look at the description of uniforms and what they can and can't wear, that nobody that is not in the military is allowed to wear stars or a flag on their uniform.
Or the stripes. And they
Or
all
the
have them.
stripes, the hash mark.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. They have the stars usually up on their right lapel, and then the badge down on their left side, and then the stripes on their shoulders. That's a military uniform. All right. Well, with that, guys, anything else? Final
Yes.
call?
One last thing here. One last thing. You would think that these military personnel on the municipal levels would also recognize the definition of what this state means, and if they didn't have any jurisdiction outside of this state, then they wouldn't be doing 90% of the shit that they're doing on the municipal level.
Yeah. And when you look at the definition of in this state, in the state statutes, it's literally referring to federal property within the state.
Absolutely.
It's federal property. When it says in this state, it's talking about federal state.
And I think California does a really good job of actually breaking down which sections of property is federal property. Not so much here in Nebraska, but when I pass, some towns and stuff, it will say the town's name. It doesn't say city of Grand Island or city of Kearney. It doesn't say that upon entering. That's only the business district.
Yeah, it'll a lot of times you'll say incorporated district of. So, yep, very good point. Well, with that, we are at the end of the stream for now. And like I said, I will be back at 6 to hopefully finish up. I think we got maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more to finish up. And hopefully we'll see you guys back then. In the meantime, you guys know me. I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. And that's to say, I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That's on you. So may God bless you and have a good day. We'll see everybody later. Bye now.